You know that feeling when your alarm goes off, and before your feet even hit the floor, you are already catastrophically behind?
Oh yeah, like your crush before you've even had a sip of coffee.
Exactly. You're just lying there staring at the ceiling, and the sheer weight of the day is already sitting on your chest. You've got an inbox that is perpetually overflowing, bills that basically require an advanced degree in mathematics to figure out, and, well, a news cycle that feels like a psychological horror movie.
Yeah, it's just nonstop.
And on top of all that, you are expected to somehow be a perfectly functioning employee, an attentive partner, a patient parent, and just a well-rounded human being. You are running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, completely exhausted from taking care of everyone else.
It genuinely feels like you have absolutely zero power. The world is just spinning out of control, your calendar is a nightmare, and you're literally just surviving.
Yeah, it is a profound collective exhaustion.
It really is. We are living in an era where we're more hyper-connected than at any point in human history, but somehow we're totally depleted. We are operating purely in survival mode.
Which changes how your brain works, right?
Completely. When you are in that state, your brain narrows its focus entirely. You stop planning for the future, you stop dreaming, and you just start reacting.
Yeah.
You only have the bandwidth to fight whatever fire happens to be burning right in front of you.
And I think the natural instinct when you feel that kind of overwhelming bone-deep burnout is to think you just need to do less.
Right, you tell yourself, I need to clear my plate.
Exactly. I need to cancel plans. I need to retreat into a dark room and hide. But today, in this deep dive, we are going to look at a solution that is wildly, almost aggressively counterintuitive.
I love this concept so much.
It's crazy, right? The cure for having no time and feeling totally overwhelmed is actually to add one more thing to your plate.
Which sounds insane.
It does. But this is the massive life-altering caveat. It has to be something deeply, intensely meaningful to you.
And that sounds completely paradoxical at first glance.
Yeah.
You're talking about adding an item to an overflowing plate to somehow cure the overflow.
Right.
But when we dig into the cognitive behavioral psychology and the neuroscience behind this, the mechanics of why this works are absolutely fascinating. It changes how we understand cognitive load entirely.
It really does. But before we get into the heavy science of it all, I have some mandatory housekeeping to take care of. Welcome to Real Talk 24, the place where we talk about money, mindset, and success. No excuses. If you're ready to level up your life, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Now, I want to try something a little different here. For just the next 60 seconds, we are going to completely drop the energy down.
Yeah, let's just slow it all down.
I want you, listening right now, to maybe close your eyes if you're not driving. Let's just take a breath.
Just let the noise of your day fade out for a second.
I want to ask you a question, and I really want you to listen to the answer that instinctively pops into your head. What problem in your life are you actually trying to solve right now?
Take a second to really hear that.
Not the problem your boss has.
Right. Not the problem your partner has.
Your problem. Just hold that in your mind.
Let it surface.
How long have you been thinking about picking up a paintbrush? Or finally updating that website you bought the domain for 3 years ago?
Or volunteering at that local shelter.
Has it been a year?
Maybe longer.
Has it been a decade?
Yeah, think about that timeline.
Are you just managing all these beautiful, distant goals in your head, carrying them around day after day, letting them slowly torture you because you never actually take the first step?
Just letting them weigh you down.
Okay, bring yourself back. Deep breath in, and let's get back to it. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, our mission is to explore a masterclass from Mel Robbins. She lays out this brilliant, science-backed framework for reclaiming your life, your time, and your sanity by deliberately inserting a personal goal into the middle of your chaos.
And our goal today is to really dissect the machinery underneath her framework. We aren't just going to list a bunch of motivational steps.
No, we really want to dig in.
Right. We are going to break down the specific neuroscience, the behavioral psychology, and the cognitive mechanics that explain exactly why taking on a new goal in the middle of a frantic life actually rescues your nervous system.
And the foundational concept here is that your goal is essentially a life raft.
I love that visual.
When the world is heavy, when the headlines are terrifying, and when your schedule is just spinning out of control, a personal goal acts as an anchor. The source material points out that it's the one thing you have absolute control over.
That's the key right there. Control.
Yeah, your boss can't fire you from your goal. The chaotic news cycle cannot cancel your goal. The demands of your family literally cannot take this specific thing away from you.
That element of control is the crux of the psychological benefit. Because when we examine the clinical definition of burnout, it isn't usually just a result of a high volume of work.
Wait, really? It's not just about working too much?
Not at all. I mean, there are people who work 80 hours a week and feel incredibly energized, while others work 30 hours and feel completely destroyed. Burnout happens when we experience a profound lack of autonomy.
Oh, wow. So it's about agency.
Exactly. You are exhausted because you feel like a passenger in your own life, just being constantly chauffeured around by the demands, emergencies, and expectations of everyone else.
You're just sitting in the back seat while everyone else drives the car.
Exactly. The feeling. So when you establish a personal goal, even an incredibly tiny one, you are staking a claim on your own autonomy. You are sending a biological signal to your brain that says, I am not just the emails I answer. I am not just the bills I pay. I have agency.
Which goes back to that life raft analogy.
Right, because a life raft doesn't calm the storm. The hurricane is still raging around you.
The massive waves of emails and obligations are still crashing.
Exactly. But the raft keeps you from drowning in them. It gives you a piece of solid ground that belongs entirely to you.
And what I found so refreshing about the source material is that these don't have to be massive, world-changing goals.
Right, they don't have to be intimidating at all.
In fact, some of the most powerful examples provided are beautifully small. We aren't just talking about starting $1 million company. We're talking about things like getting training to be a hospice volunteer, or finally going back to singing in a local community choir.
Or just learning to be a better cook.
Yeah. Mel Robbins talks about her own micro goals, like simply improving her grip strength by doing dead hangs on a pull-up bar every day, or a wildly simple goal making sure she drinks her water out of a specific giant mason jar every single day.
That is so specific, but it works.
Or, sure, on the larger side, maybe planning a move to a new city. The scale of the goal completely doesn't matter, right? The ownership of the goal does.
That's exactly it. The psychological weight of the goal is determined by its internal meaning to you, not its external size to the outside world. Small goals are often deeply profound because they are intimately connected to our daily physical reality.
Like the dead hang example.
Exactly. Doing a dead hang on a pull-up bar takes perhaps 60 seconds. But for those 60 seconds, you are prioritizing your physical vessel over every other demand in the universe. That is a radical act of self-preservation.
So let's say you've got the goal. You want to learn Italian, or you want to write a novel, or you just want to drink from the giant mason jar. The first step the framework insists on is incredibly simple, almost deceptively so. You have to decide what you want, and you must physically write it down.
Yes, you have to put it on paper.
Now I know, I can hear you listening to this and rolling your eyes. Write it down. It sounds like something a middle school guidance counselor tells you, right?
It really does sound cliche.
It does. That the source material extensively unpacks why managing your goals solely in your head is a catastrophic, fatal error. If you don't write it down, you are essentially dooming the project before you even start.
Because the brain is an incredibly sophisticated processing machine. But we have to understand that it is a terrible storage facility.
Oh, it's the absolute worst for storage.
Truly.
Yeah.
When you keep a goal purely in your working memory, it gets tossed into the exact same mental bucket as your grocery list, your lingering anxiety about an upcoming Zoom meeting, and, that random haunting memory of an embarrassing thing you said at a party in 2014.
Oh my gosh, yes. It just becomes part of the undifferentiated noise.
Exactly.
I think of it like trying to run software on a computer with 100 background apps open. Your brain's RAM is maxed out. You're trying to launch this beautiful new program, your goal, but the system is so bogged down with background anxiety and to-do lists that the whole thing just lags and eventually crashes.
That is a perfect analogy. And when cognitive RAM maxes out, the brain defaults to its least energy-intensive state, which is usually inaction or just endlessly scrolling on a phone.
Right.
The source actually brings up a fantastic insight from Oprah. Someone once asked her why so many people get stuck in life, why they feel so stagnant. Her answer was brutal, but incredibly accurate. She said, most people never take the time to get clear about what they want.
Wow. Yeah.
And James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, reinforces this with a simple maxim. Clarity is freedom.
Clarity is freedom. Let's really sit with that for a second, because usually we think of clarity as just being organized. But freedom, That's a massive claim.
It is a massive claim, but neurologically, it absolutely holds up. When you do not clearly define what is important to you by externalizing it, by actually writing it down, your brain has no established filtering mechanism.
So it can't tell what actually matters.
Right, because it lacks a filter. Everything that happens to you feels equally urgent. The ping of a group text message feels just as urgent as your life's dream of writing a screenplay.
Or a minor typo in an email feels like a 5-alarm fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without clarity, you are a slave to the urgent, constantly sacrificing the important.
There is this brilliant analogy in the source material that hit me right in the gut. It's the daycare pickup at 6:00 p.m.
Oh, I love this one.
If you are a working parent and your child's daycare strictly closes at 6:00 p.m., picking up your kid is the most important non-negotiable thing in the world. When 5:00 p.m. rolls around, because you have absolute crystal clear clarity on that goal, it grants you the freedom to ignore literally everything else.
Let's just tune it all out.
Completely. Suddenly, that urgent late-day Zoom call your boss wants to schedule, it can wait. Those 50 unread emails, they completely disappear from your consciousness. You don't even care. When something is truly, deeply important, it becomes an impenetrable shield against the noise of the world.
That daycare scenario is a phenomenal demonstration of cognitive prioritization in action. When the stakes are clear and the goal is sharply defined, the human brain effortlessly shuts down competing stimuli.
So it's a biological response.
Yes. The prefrontal cortex essentially blocks the panic signals from the amygdala regarding those unanswered emails. But if you never clearly define your personal goals by writing them down, you never build that shield.
You just remain perpetually reactive.
Exactly. You are reacting to everyone else's 6:000 p.m. deadlines, while your own goals just wither away.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Telling an exhausted, burned out parent to add another task to their plate, that sounds like a recipe for a total breakdown. You're basically handing an anvil to a drowning person.
I know, it sounds counterproductive.
I'm just imagining someone listening who is already barely holding their life together, and we're telling them, hey, write down a new project. Doesn't that just accelerate the burnout?
It's the natural objection. And it makes total logical sense until we look closely at what the source is actually suggesting and what the psychology of energy actually dictates. It is not about adding work or obligations. It is about adding meaning to solve a specific internal problem.
Okay, meaning versus work.
Right. Energy is not just a physical metric. It's highly emotional and psychological. If you add another chore, like scrubbing the baseboards, yes, you will burn out faster. You are draining the battery.
Definitely.
But if you add something that fuels your sense of self-worth, like spending 30 minutes gardening or taking an online class on a subject that genuinely excites you, that activity doesn't drain your battery. It recharges it. You are inserting a regenerative activity into a depleting schedule. The energy you get back far exceeds the time you put in.
Okay, so the goal is regenerative, but let's get into the actual physical mechanics of this. Why is a pen and paper so magical? Why can't I just type it in my notes app or, just promise myself really, really hard that I'm going to do it?
This brings us to some incredibly compelling research from Dr. Jim Doty. He's a renowned neurosurgeon from the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism.
So he really knows the brain.
He literally studies the physical architecture of the brain and how it changes based on behavior. He leans heavily on a foundational neuroscience concept called Hebbian learning. And the fundamental axiom of Hebbian learning is a simple rhyme. What fires together, wires together.
What fires together, wires together.
Exactly. When you just think about a goal while driving to work, you are firing a very weak, isolated neural circuit. It flashes for a second and then fades.
Just a blip on the radar.
Right. But Dr. Doty prescribes a specific 4-step sensory encoding process to essentially force your brain to wire this new goal deep into your subconscious architecture.
Okay, walk me through the 4 steps.
Step 1, you physically write the goal down with a pencil or pen. This is inherently tactile. You are engaging your motor cortex. You are feeling the physical friction of the pen dragging across the grain of the paper.
You're pulling it out of the abstract ether and making it a physical object in the real world.
Precisely. Step 2, you read it silently to yourself. Now you are engaging your visual processing centers in the occipital lobe.
Makes sense.
Step 3, you read the written goal out loud. Now you are engaging your vocal cords, the motor areas for speech, and your auditory processing centers. You are literally hearing your own voice to clear the goal into the room.
So you're layering all these different senses on top of each other.
Yes. And finally, step 4, You vividly visualize the specific actions required to achieve it. Notice I said the actions, not just the end result.
Yeah, the source material is fiercely specific about this distinction. If your goal is to volunteer for hospice care, you don't just visualize the happy, fulfilling ending where you feel great about yourself.
Oh, that's not enough.
You have to visualize yourself sitting at your computer looking up the specific certification requirements. You visualize the annoying process of filling out the forms. You visualize yourself driving the meals to the facility in the rain. You visualize pulling into the parking lot and walking through the front doors.
This distinction is critical for neurological preparation. By visualizing the action steps and the friction, you are engaging in mental rehearsal. You are firing all those sensory systems together.
The tactile memory of writing, the visual input, the auditory echo,
and the imaginative simulation of the effort. When these diverse regions of the brain fire simultaneously, they wire together, creating a deep, robust neural pathway. This is not pseudoscience. This is exactly how Olympic athletes prepare for a race, visualizing every single muscle twitch.
It's why commercial airline pilots spend hundreds of hours in flight simulators practicing emergency protocols.
Exactly. The brain actually struggles to differentiate between a vividly imagined, multisensory action and a physical one. You are pre-programming your nervous system to execute the behavior.
And by doing this, the framework points out that you are actively overriding your brain's default mode network, which, as I understand it, is essentially the brain's idle screen of doom.
That's a great way to put it.
It's that background loop that just constantly feeds you negativity and excuses, right? I'm too tired, it's too late, I'm too old, I don't have the money.
The default mode network, or DMN, is highly active when we are not focused on the outside world. And evolutionarily, it has a negativity bias to keep us safe from threats. It thrives on passive, unexamined repetition.
So it's basically designed to keep you stuck?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
When you leave a goal in your head, the DMN just slowly chips away at it with doubt. But by forcing this active four-step physical encoding process, you violently interrupt that negative loop. You force the brain to allocate resources away from the DMN and into the executive functioning centers. You lay down new conscious circuitry that says, we are doing this.
So you've written it down, you've bypassed the brain's negativity loop, the neural pathways are firing, you're feeling incredibly motivated.
You're ready to go.
And the most natural human instinct in the world at this exact moment is to run out of the room, find your spouse, or call your parents, or text your best friend and tell them all about this amazing new goal. You want to share the excitement.
Naturally.
But according to the source material, doing that is a massive catastrophic mistake.
It is the single fastest way to kill the momentum you just built.
The rule Mel Robbins lays out here is brutally blunt fire your family.
It is undoubtedly the most provocative part of this entire framework, and it usually elicits a very defensive reaction from people. Fire your family. It sounds harsh, almost cynical.
It really does.
But the psychological reasoning behind it is incredibly sound and deeply empathetic to the reality of family dynamics.
It is shocking the first time you hear it. I mean, you grow up assuming that your family, your partner, your parents are supposed to be your ultimate cheerleaders. If you want to do something big, they should be holding the banner at the finish line.
Right, that's the cultural narrative.
But Robbins argues that you absolutely cannot expect them to fill that role. By expecting it, you are essentially outsourcing your motivation to people who are completely fundamentally unequipped to handle it.
Let's analyze why family members so frequently push back or act dismissive or get overly critical when you announce a big personal change. It is vital to understand that it is almost never out of malice.
That's an important point. They aren't trying to be mean.
Not at all. Usually it stems from three distinct psychological realities. First, they simply do not understand the goal because it is an expression of your internal desire, born from your unique life experience, not theirs. It makes sense to you, but to them, it's out of left field.
Okay, what's the second reason?
Second, they've likely never done the thing you were trying to do, so they have absolutely no practical advice to offer. If you want to start a tech company and your parents were school teachers, they simply cannot guide you.
And the third reason?
The third reason is the most powerful. Your change scares them. Family systems operate on a principle called homeostasis. They're like a thermostat. A family develops a set of unwritten rules, roles, and dynamics to keep everything stable and predictable.
So everyone has their assigned part to play.
Exactly. When you suddenly announce, I'm changing my diet, or I'm going back to school, or I'm starting a business, you are threatening that established dynamic. Yeah. You are turning the thermostat up, and the family system will instinctively try to pull the temperature back down to where it's comfortable.
Wow.
They will express their fear for you as criticism of your goal. If your family doesn't share your goal, they fundamentally cannot support you in the specific way you need.
The source gives two incredible, highly personal examples of this dynamic. The first is about Mel Robbins' own daughter, Sawyer.
This is such a great story.
Sawyer had this massive, intimidating dream to travel solo through Asia, just backpacking for 5 months. Now, Mel openly admits that as a mother, this was her ultimate paralyzing nightmare.
Naturally,
Yeah.
any parent would be terrified.
Yeah, she was terrified for her daughter's safety. She argued against it. She brought up every worst-case scenario. She was, by her own admission, the absolute least supportive person in the family regarding this goal. But Sawyer succeeded in doing it anyway and had the time of her life.
Because she fired her mom.
Exactly, because she had already mentally fired her mom's opinion. She recognized that her mother's fear was just that, a mother's fear, and not an objective reflection of Sawyer's own capability or the validity of the goal.
Sawyer exhibited remarkable boundary setting there. She successfully decoupled her internal motivation from her mother's external validation. She protected the fragile seedling of her goal from the heavy wind of her mother's anxiety.
The second example is just as powerful, and it's about Mel's husband, Chris. Chris has been writing a book for 2.5 years. 2.5 years of sitting at a desk, grinding away.
That takes serious dedication.
And Mel reveals that she has not read a single word of his manuscript. She doesn't know what the chapters are about. She hasn't read an outline. She doesn't even know the title of the book.
That is wild.
And the beautiful, liberating part of this story is that Chris absolutely doesn't care. He isn't hovering over her shoulder, waiting for her to read a chapter and tell him he's a genius so he can find the energy to write the next one. He isn't expecting his family's validation to keep his engine running.
Chris has achieved true internalization of his motivation. He has taken complete, uncompromising responsibility for his own meaning. That is the ultimate sign of psychological maturity regarding a personal endeavor.
Just doing it for yourself.
When you stop looking to your spouse to validate your hard work, you free yourself to just do the work.
Thinking about this, it's like relying on your family to support your specific, unique personal goal is like hiring a plumber to bake a wedding cake.
I love that analogy.
Your family might be wonderful, loving people. They might be the absolute best plumbers in the entire world, and they keep the pipes of your life running perfectly, but they do not know how to bake a multi-tiered fondant wedding cake.
They don't have the tools.
Right. You are walking into their shop, demanding a cake, and then getting furious and heartbroken when they hand you a wrench. You can love them deeply, but you shouldn't expect them to bake the cake.
You are asking them for a service they do not provide, and the resulting resentment damages the relationship. Firing your family in this context is actually an act of preservation for those relationships.
Because it removes the unfair expectation.
Exactly. You stop burdening your spouse or your parents with the crushing expectation of being your specialized life coach. You let them just be your spouse and your parents.
And it completely severs the umbilical cord of people-pleasing. Think about how much of our lives we spend pursuing goals just because we think we should want them based on our family's subtle pressure.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Going to law school because your dad is a lawyer, having a massive wedding because your mother wants to invite her friends, buying a house in a certain neighborhood because it looks good to your siblings. Firing your family forces you to strip all that inherited baggage away, sit in the quiet, and ask, wait, what do I actually want? If no one ever claps for me, what do I still want to do?
It forces a confrontation with your authentic self. However, it is vital to clarify a potential misunderstanding here. Firing your family does not mean isolating yourself.
You aren't just becoming a hermit.
Right. It doesn't mean retreating to a cabin in the woods and doing everything completely alone in a vacuum. It means you must actively take responsibility for seeking out and building a new team, a dedicated, specialized team curated specifically for this goal.
Right. If you want to bake the wedding cake, you leave the plumber shop and you go find some bakers.
Exactly.
Going back to Chris, for his book, he didn't write it in a vacuum. He joined an online Zoom writing group. Now, from the outside, this sounds completely wild. It's just a group of strangers from all over the world who log on to a Zoom call at the same time, and they just sit in total silence together, typing on their respective keyboards.
They don't even talk.
But that's a team. They share the specific agonizing struggle of staring at a blank page, where the source mentions a producer named Amy. She wanted to learn how to garden. Her family didn't care about gardening, so she took an online master gardener course through the University of Vermont. She went out and found her people.
She built her own ecosystem.
Even Mel Robbins herself, before she ever launched her massively successful podcast, spent 2 straight years studying other podcasters. She listened to Jay Shetty, Stephen Bartlett, Alex Cooper, and Rich Roll. She analyzed their interview styles, their pacing, their audio quality. She built a virtual team of mentors who guided her without ever even meeting them in person.
This illustrates the immense power of self-selected communities. When you deliberately engage with a group of people who are all aligned toward a similar objective, you create an environment of normalized behavior.
Humans are deeply social creatures, right?
We are. We subconsciously mirror the behavior of our tribe. If your family tribe thinks waking up at 5 a.m. to write a book is weird, obsessive, and impossible, that belief acts as gravitational drag on your efforts. You feel crazy for trying.
Because everyone around you thinks you are.
But if your new Zoom tribe writes every single day at 5 a.m., writing a book suddenly shifts from being a monumental, bizarre task to being completely normal baseline behavior. You are hacking your social environment to support your new identity.
Okay, let's take stock of where we are. You have absolute clarity. You've written the goal down to wire it into your sensory architecture. You've stopped expecting your family to build the boat for you. And you've gone out and found a crew of people who actually know how to sail.
You are perfectly positioned.
But where does the actual physical drive come from to sit down and start rowing? When you are exhausted, where does the energy originate?
According to the framework, it requires 2 very distinct elements working in tandem. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to examine the groundbreaking work of Dr. Elliot Berkman. He is a prominent researcher from the Center for Translational Neuroscience at the University of Oregon.
This research is fascinating.
It is an absolute game changer for anyone who has ever started a new diet, downloaded a language learning app, or bought a gym membership, only to completely abandon it 3 weeks later. Dr. Berkman's research identifies 2 absolute, non-negotiable neurological requirements for creating lasting behavioral change. He categorizes them as the will and the way.
The will and the way. I visualize this like a car. The will is putting premium fuel into the gas tank. The way is having the GPS programmed and a functioning steering wheel.
I like that.
You can have a tank completely full of gas, but without a map and a steering wheel, you just crash into a tree. And conversely, you can have the most advanced satellite-guided GPS on Earth, but without gas in the tank, you just sit in the driveway looking at the map forever. You absolutely must have both.
That analogy holds up perfectly under neuroscientific scrutiny. Let's deeply analyze the fuel first, the will. The will is your deeply personal, emotional, resonant why. It is the root source of intrinsic motivation.
The real reason you're doing it.
Right. We touched on this earlier regarding people-pleasing, but the distinction is crucial. Intrinsic motivation is the only fuel source that burns hot enough and long enough to get you through the inevitable friction of change.
So extrinsic motivation doesn't work.
Extrinsic motivation, doing something for external rewards, for praise, for social media likes, or to avoid the judgment of others, is a highly volatile, fast-burning fuel. It always runs out. The will is the internal anchor that fuels you through the dark, cold mornings when every fiber of your being says, I don't feel like doing this today.
The source material provides some fascinating real-world examples of finding this true why, and what completely shocked me is how often the real why has absolutely nothing to do with the surface-level goal itself.
It's rarely about the surface goal.
It's almost always a Trojan horse for a deeper emotional need. For instance, Mel talks about her goal of running a marathon. Initially, it was just a superficial bucket list item. She openly admits she wasn't trying to break any records. She was the type who would be perfectly happy just limping across the finish line before they took the barricades down.
Right, just to say she did it.
If her fuel was just, I want to run 26 miles, she would have quit in week 2 of training. But she found her real why. The marathon training gave her a bulletproof, unquestionable excuse to disappear from her chaotic household for 3 to 4 hours a weekend to just run and hang out with her girlfriends.
She brilliantly attached a highly demanding, painful physical task to a deeply fulfilling emotional and social need. The running became the toll she was willing to pay to access the connection with her friends.
Or consider the goal of cooking at home. A lot of people set a New Year's resolution to learn to cook. But if your real why is just trying to replicate Gordon Ramsay recipes because you think you should, the first time you burn a pan of chicken, you'll just order pizza.
Exactly, because the friction is too high.
But what if your why has nothing to do with culinary passion? What if your why is that you realize you are burning thousands of dollars a year on expensive takeout, and if you can just learn to cook basic meals at home, you can save enough money for a down payment on a house in 3 to 5 years. Suddenly, standing in the kitchen chopping onions isn't a chore about food.
It's the literal vehicle driving you toward earning your own home.
Exactly.
When you discover that deeper, intrinsic link, the daily action is stripped of its drudgery and imbued with massive meaning. Another profoundly moving example from the source material revolves around physical health.
Oh, this one is so powerful.
Mel details a moment where her daughter actually staged a family intervention because Mel was running herself into the ground. She was 56 years old, completely depleted, and her doctor informed her she needed to consume 125 to 140 grams of protein every single day just to rebuild her basic physical strength.
That's a lot of protein to track.
It is. Now, if her motivation came from the toxic extrinsic media pressure to have six-pack abs for summer, she would have failed. That kind of vanity fuel is incredibly fragile. But her why shifted to something monumental. She realized she didn't want to be frail at 57. She wanted to possess the physical strength to lift her future grandchildren up in the swimming pool.
Just hearing that gives me chills. I want to be strong enough to lift my future grandkids in the pool. That is a why that gets you out of bed when it's dark and raining and your muscles are screaming. That is the definition of premium fuel.
It absolutely is.
Or take her husband Chris again. His goal was hosting a free meditation circle on Tuesday nights at a local library or a restaurant. But his actual why wasn't even about spreading the gospel of meditation. The genuine problem he was trying to solve in his life was a painful lack of community and connection. The meditation circle was simply the architectural tool he used to build the community he was starting for.
So we have clearly established the fuel, we understand the will, now we must define the way. The way is the how. It is the practical, step-by-step cognitive execution of the goal.
Right, getting down to the logistics.
The source uses a very helpful grounding visual here. Imagine a beautiful, long brick path stretching out in front of you, leading to your destination. Every single action you take is just laying one single brick. The way is your specific strategy for how you are going to lay those bricks without getting overwhelmed by the length of the path.
And this is exactly where so many ambitious people trip up and fall flat on their faces. They look at the massive goal, they stare all the way out at the horizon, they realize how many thousands of bricks it's going to take, and they become completely paralyzed by the scale of it.
It's too much to process at once.
But the framework offers brilliant strategies to make laying the bricks actually sustainable. The first strategy comes from Dr. Katie Milkman, a behavioral scientist at Wharton. Her research suggests that you absolutely have to make the process fun. You have to actively build instant gratification into the hard work. She coined a term for this called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling is a phenomenal behavioral trick that manipulates our neurochemistry. In our society, we often operate under this very rigid, puritanical mindset that achieving a worthwhile goal must involve immense suffering.
Like if you aren't miserable, you aren't working hard enough.
Exactly.
Right.
If it's not a miserable, soul-crushing grind, it somehow doesn't count. Dr. Milkman's research completely shatters that illusion. To sustain long-term action, you have to pair a behavior you inherently want to do with a behavior you need to do, but resist.
The example Mel gives in the masterclass is so relatable. She loves trashy fantasy audiobooks. She calls them her ultimate guilty pleasure books about dragons and magic and drama. So she makes a hard, unbreakable rule for herself. She's only allowed to listen to her fantasy audiobooks when she's doing her dead hangs or lifting heavy weights at the gym.
That is brilliant.
She isn't allowed to listen to them in the car on her commute. She isn't allowed to listen while doing the dishes. Only at the gym. Suddenly, her brain completely flips the script. She actually wants to go to the gym because she desperately wants to find out what happens to the dragons in Chapter 4. She successfully paired the physical pain of the workout with the narrative pleasure of the book.
She is essentially hacking her brain's dopamine reward system. The immediate dopamine release triggered by the thrilling audiobook offsets and masks the physical friction and discomfort of the gym.
So smart.
But we must also consider scenarios where the friction isn't physical effort, but cognitive overwhelm. What happens if you have the will, but you simply don't possess the knowledge of how to start laying the first brick?
Right, the classic, I don't even know where to start excuse. It kills millions of dreams. But the source material suggests something so incredibly modern and practical to bypass this. Use artificial intelligence.
AI is a perfect tool for this.
If your goal is to write a business plan for a new bakery and you have absolutely no idea what a business plan even looks like, you don't need to go get an MBA. You log into an AI tool like Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT and you type a prompt. I have this massive goal to open a bakery. I am totally overwhelmed. Break this down into 30 tiny, fun, daily actions I can take over the next month that will take me less than 20 minutes a day.
That completely demystifies the process.
You completely outsource the heavy cognitive load of planning and structuring to a machine, so your human brain can just focus on laying the single brick it hands you for today.
It completely removes the barrier of entry by eliminating the decision fatigue associated with planning. But the final, and perhaps most psychologically durable strategy for the way comes from James Clear. And this is a vital paradigm shift. You must attach the daily action to your identity, not to the final outcome.
I love this concept. It's the difference between saying, I want to read a book this month versus saying, I am a reader.
Exactly the distinction. When you focus entirely on the outcome, like losing 20 pounds or writing a 50,000-word manuscript, you place yourself in a psychological state of persistent deficit until the very end.
Because you technically haven't succeeded yet.
Right. You are essentially failing to reach your goal every single day until the one day you finally achieve it. That is a miserable way to live. But when you shift your focus to an identity, I am the kind of person who chooses peace over drama. Or I am the kind of person who walks my dogs every morning. Or I am the kind of person who makes my bed. Every single time you take a tiny action, you are casting a definitive vote for that new identity.
You win immediately.
Yes, you experience immediate, undeniable success in the present moment.
But wait, let's go back to the will for a second. I need to poke a hole in this.
Go for it.
What if someone is listening and their deeply personal why is actually just totally embarrassingly superficial? Like, let's say their goal is working out and their actual fuel is literally just wanting to look incredibly hot for their 20-year high school reunion so their ex gets jealous.
That happens a lot, actually.
Does Dr. Berkman's research say that goal is doomed to fail because it's not deep and noble enough?
According to the clinical research on motivation and the consensus of behavioral psychology, yes, that endeavor is highly likely to fail before it ever reaches the finish line.
Really? Even if they're super angry?
Even then, superficial goals, driven entirely by external validation, doing it to manipulate someone else's perception of you, or to enact petty revenge, lack intrinsic structural integrity. When the training gets genuinely difficult, when it is freezing rain outside and your alarm goes off at 5 a.m., the fleeting desire to spite an expira usually isn't strong enough to overcome the immediate visceral physical discomfort of getting out of a warm bed.
So it burns out.
Superficial fuel burns hot, but it burns incredibly fast, and then it is gone. Intrinsic fuel, I want to be strong so I can live a long, independent life, is an infinite resource.
Okay, so we have secured the premium intrinsic fuel. We have the GPS programmed. We know how to lay the bricks, and we are bundling our temptations. But we are still left with the massive, glaring original problem that started this entire conversation.
The time factor.
How in the world do we actually find the physical time to drive the car or lay the bricks when our daily schedules are already maxed out with jobs, kids, and obligations? This brings the entire framework down to earth with Rule 4, the Hot 15.
The Hot 15 is the tactical operational engine of this entire framework. It is the definitive practical solution to the universal I have no time excuse.
The Hot 15 is brilliantly simple. You just find 15 minutes a day. That's it, 15 minutes. And the source material goes so far as to say, if 15 minutes a day is too much, find 15 minutes a week to work on the goal.
Just a 15-minute brick.
And the specific examples the source gives of what actually constitutes a brick completely redefined my understanding of what productivity looks like.
In what way did it redefine it for you?
Well, we usually operate under this delusion that if a workout isn't an hour long and we aren't sweating profusely, it isn't a real workout, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't count.
Oh, definitely. The all or nothing mindset.
But Mel Robbins completely lowers the barrier to entry. She says, if your big goal is to build a daily meditation practice, the first entire week of laying bricks might not even involve meditating at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Your Hot 15 for the first week might literally just be making a cup of herbal tea, walking over to a comfortable chair in the corner of the room, and just sitting down in it. That is the entire brick.
That is fascinating.
If your goal is to walk a mile every day, your first 10 bricks might just consist of putting on your running sneakers, walking to the end of your driveway, turning around, and walking back inside the house.
This is a profound textbook application of a psychological principle called behavioral shaping.
Behavioral shaping.
Yes. You are deliberately not trying to conquer the final complex behavior right out of the gate. You are solely focused on conquering the activation energy required to simply initiate the sequence. You are digging the initial neurological groove of the routine into your brain.
Because starting is the hardest part.
Always. The friction is always highest at the very beginning of a task. By making the task laughably small, you eliminate the friction.
She gives this incredibly vulnerable example about her own process of writing books. Writing a book is a monumental task. She says she will sit down at her desk for her designated 15 minutes, stare at a completely blank Word document, and literally type the words, "I don't know what to write, my brain is completely dead, I have absolutely nothing of value to say."
Just letting it out.
And she will just type variations of that for 15 straight minutes until the timer goes off. And you know what? Under this framework, that counts as a successfully laid brick. She showed up at the desk, she cast a vote for the identity of, "I am a writer."
It is a victory of presence over perfection. Or consider the universally daunting goal of getting your personal finances in order. Most people avoid this because they think they have to overhaul their entire financial life, create a massive spreadsheet, and solve all their debt in one agonizing 3-hour sitting.
Which just causes total paralysis.
Exactly. Under the Hot 15, day 1 is simply logging into your bank account and looking at your active monthly subscriptions. You don't even cancel them, you just visually acknowledge them.
That's the whole 15 minutes.
Right. Day 2, your Hot 15 is spending 15 minutes clicking unsubscribe on the ones you don't use. You are digging that lost money back out. It is micro progress, but it is inexorable, unstoppable progress.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The framework points out that the actual timing of when you execute this 15 minutes matters immensely. The source highlights research by a biologist named Dr. Christoph Randler, which was prominently featured in the Harvard Business Review.
Oh, the morning research.
Yes. His data proves that anchoring your intention in the morning, and this is the crucial part, doing it before you ever look at your phone dramatically, statistically increases your likelihood of follow-through for the rest of the day.
This circles perfectly back to what we discussed at the very beginning regarding autonomy versus reactivity. When you wake up, roll over, and immediately grab your smartphone, you are instantly plunging your brain's delicate morning chemistry into a highly reactive, stressful state.
You're letting the world in before you're even awake.
You are immediately responding to other people's emergencies in your inbox, the terrifying news cycle, and the highly engineered dopamine hijacking algorithms of social media. Your cognitive battery is being drained before you even stand up.
That's so true.
But if you protect the first 15 minutes of the day to do Dr. Doty's encoding exercise, writing down your personal goal, visualizing the steps, or physically doing your Hot 15 brick, you are establishing a proactive, autonomous baseline. You are declaring to your nervous system that you are in charge of the day, not the phone.
It's the ultimate psychological defense mechanism against the chaos of the modern world. But I know exactly what the skeptics are thinking. Can 15 minutes a week really change the trajectory of human life? Or is this just a cozy psychological trick to make us feel better about doing the absolute bare minimum?
Like a participation trophy.
Exactly. It can feel a little bit like we're handing out participation trophies for goal setting.
It is a very common, very rational skepticism. But the underlying science proves that the Hot 15 is emphatically not a trick to justify laziness. It is a scientifically validated method for rewiring your self-concept.
So it's about the identity again.
Yes. The true power of those 15 minutes is not found in the immediate, tangible output. It's not about the sheer number of words you typed or the exact number of calories you burned in that tiny window. The transformational power is that it acts as empirical proof to your subconscious mind that you are the kind of person who shows up.
It builds trust with yourself.
Exactly. It rebuilds shattered self-trust. Once you trust yourself to consistently show up for 15 minutes, the behavior naturally, organically scales. Eventually you stay at the desk for 30 minutes, then an hour, not through sheer willpower, but because the intense psychological friction of starting has been completely eliminated.
I love looking at it through the lens of compound interest. If I walked up to you and told you to put a single penny in a jar, you'd laugh in my face. It's worthless.
Right, it's just a penny.
But if you take that penny and double it every single day, the math dictates you will have millions of dollars by the end of a single month. That 15 minutes is the penny. It compounds infinitely more over time than sitting around paralyzed waiting for a magical lottery win of 3 free hours that, let's be honest, is never ever going to arrive in a busy adult's life.
Precisely. You are investing tiny, manageable increments of time consistently, and the psychological returns on your identity, your confidence, and your capability compound massively over the months and years.
Okay, so you were doing it. You were executing the framework flawlessly. You have the goal. You fired the family and found your tribe. You identified the deep intrinsic why. You are diligently laying a 15-minute brick every single day before you check your phone. You are absolutely crushing it.
Everything is going perfectly.
But then reality hits. The universe intervenes. You catch a terrible case of the flu. A family member gets seriously ill and requires your round-the-clock care. A massive, unavoidable crisis at work paralyzes your schedule. You miss a day of your 15 minutes.
It happens to everyone.
Then you miss a second day. Then you miss an entire week. Your beautiful streak is broken. The immediate, overwhelming human instinct in that moment is to throw your hands up and say, well, I ruined it. The streak is dead. I failed. I might as well completely quit.
That's the danger zone right there.
This brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most forgiving and crucial rule of the entire framework. You will never lose if you don't quit.
This principle directly attacks and dismantles the destructive all-or-nothing cognitive distortion that derails almost all personal development and behavioral change efforts.
Yes, the tyranny of the all-or-nothing mindset. It's the voice that says, if I can't execute this perfectly, I'm going to do absolutely nothing at all. But the visual the source material provides here is so incredibly comforting and grounded.
Also,
imagine you were on that path and you successfully laid 14 bricks. And then life completely blindsides you with a crisis. You have to walk away. Those 14 bricks do not magically disappear. They didn't evaporate into thin air.
They're still right there.
They're still sitting right there, solidly in the dirt on the path, patiently waiting for you to return whenever you are ready.
To understand why this matters, we have to look at the definitive science of grit. Angela Duckworth is a highly respected professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's the author of the landmark, culture-shifting book, Grit.
Oh, her work is incredible.
She dedicated her career to studying exactly what allows certain people to persevere through monumental, grueling challenges while others quit. And her empirical findings are quite counterintuitive to how society views success.
Because we think of willpower as this explosive thing.
Right. We have been conditioned by movies and media to think of willpower as this intense, punishing, Rocky Balboa running up the snowy mountain effort. We think it requires screaming intensity. But Duckworth's data proves that true, enduring willpower doesn't look like explosive intensity at all. It looks like slow, boring, methodical consistency.
The specific example she gave during her interview on Mel's podcast absolutely blew my mind and completely changed how I view high performance. She talked about Michael Phelps,
the ultimate swimmer.
We're talking about a man with 23 Olympic gold medals. Objectively, the greatest, most dominant swimmer in the history of the human race. You would assume his practices were agonizing displays of superhuman effort every single day.
Right, you'd think he's going 10 out of 10 all the time.
But his coach noted that Phelps almost never gives a 10 out of 10 intensity at practice. He operates at a steady 7 or an 8. But the absolute secret to his dominance is that he swims every single day. He doesn't burn his central nervous system out with a 10 out of 10 effort that requires a week of recovery. He just consistently, quietly lays a 7 out of 10 brick day after day, year after year.
That observation is the absolute essence of sustainable human progress. Perfectionism is a trap because it demands a 10 out of 10 performance every single time. That inevitably, biologically leads to a crash, which then leads to a prolonged period of 0 out of 10 performance.
You just burn out completely.
True grit accepts a 7 out of 10 or even a 4 out of 10 on a bad day, but it demands that you simply return to the tasks the next day. And when Professor Duckworth talks about consistency, it is crucial to note that she does not mean a flawless, unbroken streak.
Because life happens.
Elite performers are human. They get sick, they tear muscles, they experience deep grief and emotional breakdowns. The defining difference is not that they never fall off the path. The difference is the speed and the lack of self-judgment with which they step back onto it.
And this ties so beautifully back to the identity shift we talked about earlier with James Clear's work. Let's say you were doing great, but then you experienced a terrible, heartbreaking loss in your life, and you've been grieving heavily for 6 months. You haven't meditated or worked out once in half a year.
A completely understandable break.
Or you get a severe knee injury playing tennis, and your proud 3-year daily running streak is instantly dead. If your entire goal was just attached to maintaining the streak itself, you feel like a total irredeemable failure. The game is over.
You lose your anchor.
But because you attach the goal to your identity, I'm a person who values movement, you approach the temporary failure entirely differently. You don't panic. You don't spiral into self-loathing. You simply ask yourself, what would a person who prioritizes their health do right now in this exact situation?
This raises an important question. How do we fundamentally define failure? If personal identity is the unbreakable foundation of your actions, failure is no longer a terminal endpoint. It is merely a temporary pause in the physical expression of that identity.
So the identity adapts to the situation.
Precisely. A person who genuinely prioritizes their health doesn't stop prioritizing health just because their knee is broken. They simply find a new, adapted way to express it. They focus on nutrition or upper body mobility, or they simply allow themselves to rest and heal without guilt, knowing they will start walking again the moment they are medically cleared. The core identity remains completely intact through the interruption.
It's exactly like reading a massive sweeping novel. If you are reading a great book and you put a physical bookmark in it at page 200, and then your life gets incredibly chaotic with a new job so you don't pick the book up again for 6 entire months, the 200 pages you already read don't magically erase themselves from the book.
Words are still there.
The ink doesn't disappear. You don't have to punish yourself by starting over from page 1. You just open the book, look at the bookmark, acknowledge the break, and pick up exactly where you left off on page 201. The path is still there.
That is a phenomenal encapsulation of the entire philosophy of sustainable growth.
Yeah.
The progress is banked. The neural pathways you built are lying dormant, just waiting for you to activate them again.
So we have covered an immense amount of psychological and practical ground today. We've walked through the entire framework for reclaiming your life from burnout. You have to decide exactly what you want and physically write it down, utilizing all 4 of your senses to forcibly wire it into your brain's architecture and bypass the default mode network.
That crucial first step.
You have to boldly fire your family from the role of your life coach and instead build a curated team that actually understands the specific mission. You have to discover your deep intrinsic will, your true why, and define your practical way by making the process fun through temptation bundling and attaching every action to your core identity.
You're setting up the systems.
You have to use the Hot 15 to bypass the excuse of having no time, laying just one tiny, manageable brick a day, preferably first thing in the morning before the world hijacks your attention. And finally, you have to banish the toxic all-or-nothing mindset. You have to recognize that the bricks you've laid are permanent fixtures on your path, and you only truly lose the game if you permanently refuse to pick up the trowel again.
It is a remarkably robust and compassionate framework, primarily because it anticipates inevitable human failure and actively builds psychological resilience directly into the process, rather than demanding robotic perfection.
Which none of us can achieve anyway.
Exactly. But if we synthesize all of these diverse sources, all of this neuroscience, the behavioral psychology, the stories of Sawyer and Chris and Mel, there is a deeper, unifying philosophical takeaway that I believe is the most profound and provocative thought of all. In our society, we spend so much of our precious energy obsessing over the finish line. We fixate on the completed manuscript, the heavy marathon medal around our neck, or the perfect 365-day meditation streak on our app. We are conditioned to think the completed object is the prize. But it isn't.
It's not about the medal.
Not at all. The true prize is not the external object you eventually acquire at the end of the path. The true prize is the version of you that you had to forge and become in order to lay those bricks in the middle of the raging storm. The real prize is the profound sense of autonomy you systematically reclaimed from a chaotic world that was trying its hardest to grind you down. By choosing to do one small, meaningful thing entirely for yourself, you remembered who you actually are.
You remembered who you are. I love that. And on that note, thanks for watching. If you got value from this episode, make sure to subscribe to Real Talk 24, like the video, and share it with someone who needs it. See you in the next episode.